Good evening, everybody. It's been a while, hasn't it? We skipped a week. That was my fault. And now we're back. Provided these audio settings work and you can hear us.
I suppose we
Good
should
evening,
start
everybody.
talking a little bit, huh?
Yeah. Oh, I just heard myself on the screen.
Been a while,
hasn't it? We skipped a week. That was my fault. And now we're back. Provided these audio settings work and you can hear us.
I suppose we
Good
should
evening,
start
everybody.
talking a little bit, huh?
Okay.
Yeah,
I just think we're good.
Yep, sounds good to me.
Phenomenal. Well, welcome back, everybody, once again to Geek presents Final Fantasy Tactics Retrospective. This is episode 11. Probably going to make some progress here, but like the bar owner says, welcome, come in, and relax. That's what we're going to do. We're going to have a relaxing, cozy stream. Got a full panel tonight with us this evening. Gracing us with their presences.
Cardinal Studios.
Catholic Lancer.
Crusader Saracen.
And Martel.
And they did it in alphabetical order without being asked. That's how professional we are around here.
We're just that good.
They are. That's right. But I'm going to throw things off a bit because I'm your host, Brian, former regular co-host of Geek with Data Warpick and Dornall. And now I do this series whenever I feel like it. And didn't feel like it last week. I had a really hectic week between work and some travel I had to do. So just couldn't get the time together to do this. Like, honestly, I was passing out at around 7 p.m. most nights. So that's not conducive to primetime cozy streaming. But we are back. I'm rededicating myself to doing the full normal week of Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week. Try to get back on track, get back on the wagon, bring you some top shelf retro gaming goodness. So, how's everyone else's week been? I will start with AA.
Been pretty good. It was cozy last week.
It's good. I'm going to stay cozy. How about UCL?
Just been recovering last week, so it's been kind of lazy.
Well, I don't think you can be faulted for that. Crusader Saracen, what's happening?
Not much, just making some moves with regards to school, work. I won't disclose it, but it's been pretty busy for me.
Oh, you won't, or you can't disclose it?
Won't.
Fair enough. You're allowed. And last but certainly not least, Martel. What's up?
Nothing much. Last week was kind of an off week for me. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty normal for a lot of folks. The holidays officially end, and then we start getting into the made-up greeting card ones. But doesn't mean we can't enjoy our time together now. So, to recap, I have no idea where we are in Final Fantasy Tactics. Because I forgot. Oh, wait, that's right. We are heading back into the woods. Because most of us were there when we did the audio test a couple weeks ago. And I didn't save because I wanted to show the streamers at home this. So we're going to be doing Argway Woods, then Zarkile Falls. Hopefully get to Bethel Garrison, which is a cool sounding name for a base. We're going to dive right in. And tonight we have Raul Nyanzi in chat. We have Megabuster Shepard, hey. We have Chan. I have Emily Ford, and then at least one of my co-hosts. That should fill up more as we go along.
Dave Martell. Cool name. No relation, but cool name.
Oh yeah, we got our wizard with a full slate of calculator skills. That has just been all kinds of fun to play around with.
As well as a couple of punching bags, it looks like.
Well, I'm not going to be bringing them into this fight because this is a scripted game advancing fight, so I'm going to go with my A team.
Seems like one of those names that the writer came up with by just looking at a random country on his globe and then taking the first letter.
You never know. Well, look at that. He's doing the Pokemon thing. A goblin. Okay, can anyone explain to me the Japanese pop culture convention of like a monster or a little critter of some kind only being able to say its own name or some variation thereof?
You know, that's something I actually don't know. Why, like, that's something you see even, like, in Pokemon, right? Where Pokemon can only more or less say their name.
Well, that's unique to the anime as well. In the video game, they just had, like, their little 8-bit cries, which were often transliterated as just, like, Gao or Ki.
But, like, you know, in general, Brian is right. Actually, that's something I didn't even think about or notice. It seems like in a lot of Japanese media, like, small critters tend to say, like, when they speak, they only say their name, or, like, a vowel of their name, or something, some variation thereof. That's interesting. I never noticed that.
Helps drive the name into the minds of impressionable kids, so they buy it.
You also see a variation on this in Zeta Gundam, where some characters can only say their love interest name.
Oh, you've been watching that, have you?
I finished that up last year now.
Oh, wow. Time flies.
The name Kamiyu is definitely burned into my head.
Oh, so I thought you said double Zeta for some reason. Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Nah, I haven't touched Double Zeta.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about that.
Okay, so in the chat, we have Dave Martell of the Bizarre Archives. Great collection of Pulp Fiction guides. I recommend you check it out. And he's asking, do any of us do interviews, Brian?
Yeah, I've been known to.
Well, there you go. Brian's email is publicly available on his blog. If you're interested, I suppose, contact him and see what you can work out.
Well, look at that. I have an agent now. How much do you charge? Is it the standard 10%?
10%, yeah.
Or would that be a publicist? I'll have to send you over the contract.
What if he's both and it's 15?
Well, see, that's what literary agents normally get because old pub writers have more need for validation than common sense. And
I'd rather have a lead than an agent.
Hand holding and training wheels.
I mean, in fairness, Old Pub has access to that propaganda machine we talked about last time, where they can just decide if you should be a bestseller.
Not so much anymore, though. Like, it's really slipping.
Well, these days, sure, but back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day, totally.
Oh, not to
Apparently they
sidetrack
can
us
still
back
afford to
onto
keep
the wizard book conversation, but I learned one more piece of information that explains its popularity. It was one of the first series where the author was very friendly to fanfic writers and encouraged it instead of trying to copyright strike it.
You know, that actually explains a lot. Because, yeah, series really took off right about. Fanfic writing also took off.
You know, that kind of links in with J.D. Cowan's recent post. Getting the fans into pulp was ultimately a mistake.
I don't think I've read that post.
It's a bit long, but it's very interesting to me. Working on that on the sixth one for myself.
J.D. Cohen's posts are always excellent reads. Hope he shows up in chat tonight.
Definitely.
It was a fascinating essay. I hadn't realized how integral basically the old school bugmen were into splintering the genre into, or splintering sci-fi off as its own genre.
Right, and leaving fantasy behind.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that came up that I noticed is the two most successful, or at least it looked like it was most successful, fan fiction writers at the time were Mort Weisinger and Julius Schwartz. Those two individuals went on to national publications as editors for DC Comics.
Fascinating tidbit.
Yeah, it's very fascinating.
About what time period would that be?
Well,
For
it
those
was
post-government post.
Well, it was the 1940s, and the interesting thing is they'd already gone into the business of being literary agents. They were agents for science fiction writers. So who was writing comic books at that time? At least for National, was Alfred Bester writing on Green Lantern. In fact, he's the guy who came up with In Brightest Day and Blackest Night.
Ha!
Ultimately, Gardner Fox was a long-term writer for DC. A lot of creations under his belt, like Hawkman and Flash and Sandman and the Justice Society of America. Edmund Hamilton came along in the, I believe, late 40s or early 50s and started working on Superman and other titles. But yeah, they were linked into comic books by the authors who were writing comic books. So they came over to national publications and ultimately moved into the editorial roles.
How deep does that rabbit hole go, I wonder?
Deep.
I think he can dig pretty deep. I'm waiting for JD's next post because some of the things I know what he's going to be writing in there, but I'm waiting for him to put together a lot more of the pieces.
Oh, you
Something
know,
encouraging.
Yeah, go ahead.
Something encouraging to take away from all this too is like how many of these early fan publications like sprang up and failed, etc. But like, even though the history of the genre has a lot of these amateur publications that don't go anywhere, some of the people involved still went on to be highly influential. So for our side, even though Superversive Press proper shut down, all of the people that were involved in making it good and got experience there are still around and still working.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's historical precedent for them to be able to still go on to have a good, positive impact on the culture, despite the loss of a official vehicle.
Looks like chat's talking about Aragon, and I think I can answer how it took off when it did. One, there was the novelty aspect of having a 15-year-old writing that kind of a doorstopper. Two, it was competently done fan fiction spin on Star Wars with dragons. You really don't need much more than that. Having only read the first 2 books, I couldn't tell you about the rest.
Okay, so Dave Martell says, I'd love to come on as a guest at some point if you guys do interviews. I have a moderate following, and I'd like to cross-pollinate with some new spheres.
Oh, so he wants to come on Geek Gab. Okay. I am not a regular host, so I do not have gatekeeping faculties. You'll need to ask Daddy Warpig and or Dornall.
And they're pretty reachable on Twitter, so...
Dornall is not these days. But yeah, Daddy Warpig is. You can just look him up. He should be able to get you in touch with Dornall, because I think it is Dornall who does most of the scheduling, he told me. Yeah, what can I say? To get on a prestige outfit like this, you gotta win in line. You can't jump the velvet rope. You gotta jump through some hoops. He'll probably quiz you on everything you never wanted to know about Torg. So get ready.
Well, since we have the panel here, mind if I pose my question?
Go for it.
Okay. So, we've talked a few times about animation versus live action as a genre for doing works, and we can also throw comics into this, but I had the thought watching a fan animation of all things the other day, and then almost immediately thereafter watching some clip of one of the more recent Marvel films. I think that animation might be inherently superior to live action films in a certain respect, in that you can better portray weight and impact in fight scenes. Because anyone here who's gotten into a fist fight, like, how many people here have?
Me.
Okay, so, like, when you take a hit, or when you dish one out, you can feel the inertia, right? Like, you can feel the recoil of hitting the other guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, in a lot of animation, like Attack on Titan, or even some of the cartoons that I watched as a kid, there was a sense of impact when someone's fist hit the other guy's face, whereas in a lot of the Marvel films, and even stuff like the second Pacific Rim film, it just feels weightless. It's like they're fighting zero G, only even less, because there's no inertia, there's no sense of actually taking a hit.
Are you aware of the changes that were made to PG-13 a couple years ago?
The ones where you can't actually show the moment of impact?
Yes, because, well, I tend to agree with you. With animation, I think Marvel's a bad example because they're playing by the PG-13 rules. And as I think Daddy Warpig on this podcast put it, it's like trying to show a kiss at like a wedding scene without actually showing the bride and groom kiss.
Agreed, but even with rated films, it's more difficult to show that. Like, look at Seven Samurai. Like, just because of the nature of the medium, you have to do a lot more work to make it look like they're actually taking the kind of disabling shot that would break a rib without actually breaking a rib.
I mean, that's just acting. It really comes down to the acting, whether or not they can convincingly, pretend that they got gut punched or hit in the head or something. I wouldn't say it's necessarily more work. It's just a matter of the stuntmen and the actors that you have, I think.
Okay. And quick item for chat and the panel. So we have now rescued Boko, who is the first character from a previous Final Fantasy game to have a cameo in this one. He's the Chocobo from FF5. So we have the option to add him to our party. We're gonna put it to chat. Should we invite him to join our little band? And I'll give that some time to populate. So go ahead, panel. Continue.
So basically, you're saying animation requires less skill to convey the inertia in a fight.
Oh no, I wouldn't say that at all. It's just
I would say it's
Kind of-
easier, certainly.
So live action takes more skill rather than animation taking less skill, if you want to phrase it that way.
Yeah, I would say so.
I don't know. I've seen some bad animation. It's just easier to hire bad actors than it is to hire a bad animator.
Well, you can also get a lot more, like, just straight up graphic with animation in a way that you can't with live action unless you jump through a lot of technical hoops. Like, going back to the whole Attack on Titan thing, someone getting sliced in half. Or going back to the Kurosawa example, Seven Samurai, someone getting stabbed.
I mean, you can't really do like things like squish frames in real life, so I guess I kind of see what you mean. Yeah,
Squish frames.
you know, like smear frames, squish frames, like you don't know what squish and smear frames are?
Nope.
Oh, okay. So okay. Have you seen like those memes where you take something from like a Disney movie, or Naruto in particular is a good example of this, where they pause right in the middle of like a character doing a motion, like they're getting punched or something, and the character looks like a misshapen monstrosity, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's a squish frame, where like you take the character model and you distort it, right? In the
Right.
process of motion to convey, like, to exaggerate, right?
Right.
Motion or movement or something.
Which is where we get the big Chungus thing from.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know the exact origin of that particular frame. It probably was some sort of squish frame, but more or less you get the idea.
Yeah, the Disney whirl.
Yeah, Disney World. Yeah, that's a really good example of squish frame. They pause it right as he was. It's like a. Yeah, they pause it right as he's moving or twirling, and it gives you some really It can give you some funny images, but you have to keep in mind it wasn't meant to be viewed as like a single frame. It's meant to be viewed as a long, smooth animation.
Okay, and it looks like the unanimous vote from chat is to add Boko the Chocobo to our formation, so I'll do that now.
Who doesn't want their own pet terror bird?
They used to
Orville.
hunt those in New Zealand, apparently.
Terror birds?
Oh, no, not terror birds, but something similar. Moa.
Okay.
Oh, Mega Buster Shepherd brings up something that we've been talking about recently.
There he is.
Says, pro tip, don't read light novels.
Here's a question. Is the prose inherently awful, or is it a translation thing? To address Mr. Nyancy's question.
In my experience, light novel pieces tend to be kind of like assembly line productions from first or second time authors.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to ruffle a lot of feathers, but they're a lot like the early pulps, actually. Very, very replaceable.
Ooh, shots
If you
fired.
if you know the story beats for one genre of light novel, you can pretty much exactly figure out what's going to happen.
The interesting thing is that's you've just described about 90% of comic books too.
Yep.
You're not wrong, actually. There's a lot similar between light novels and pulps, especially in terms of like, you know, the business model is very similar, right? The physical format is very similar. They tend to be very, how should I say, character-driven stories, right? Smaller in length, smaller in size. Usually
There's a reason-
genre fiction, not necessarily, but usually genre fiction, right?
Yeah. And there's a reason why the old popes were also sometimes called penny dreadfuls.
Yeah, it's
It's just that we remember the best examples and no one remembers the worst. And
It's
I'm sure
interesting.
that... Go ahead.
I was going to say it's interesting taking a look at some of the what really would have been the penny dreadfuls in the U.S. back in the 1880s, 1890s, as well as in England about the same time. I mean, the ones in England are a little bit more magazine-like. But reading through some of those stories, there's an incredible amount of depth in some of those stories. They're still very pulpy, but hit up Internet Archive and download some Strand magazine and read through it. It's really very interesting.
Some of them, yes, but I feel like the point that just gets glossed over is 90% of everything is pure trash. And, well, previous eras are no exception. Everyone remembers Shakespeare. No one remembers his competitors who are churning out formulaic Drek.
Absolutely, not disagreeing with you at all. It's just interesting to dig a little bit deeper beyond what we call the pulps from the 20s and 30s and actually go a little bit farther back yet.
I mean, Tarzan and Sherlock Holmes were 1880s, 1890s, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It looks like Delita and Princess Ophelia are in quite a standoff here. Anyway, but go ahead. Go ahead with your point.
Oh, actually, there was an interesting editorial by George Orwell that I read a while back, where he was ranting about particular serialized story popular in English magazines in the 30s. About basically a boarding school.
Mm-hmm.
And his complaint, I think Brian might have read the same thing, but...
I did, yeah.
Okay. So correct me if I'm misremembering anything here, but his complaint was that the characters were very boilerplate so that the audience could be induced to insert themselves into their shoes. Nothing ever happened so that the story would essentially reset to the next week they could do the same thing all over again. And all of the plot beats fell into one of 5 overall things.
Correct. And if you notice, all J.K. Rowling did was take that shop-worn British penny dreadful subgenre of just the boarding school genre and add magic to it. That's all she did.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But it just goes to show that the whole light novel, everything falls into one of the same few beats, is nothing new. And I'm sure that the top 10% of light novels are worth reading, but...
You know what they say, it's not a matter of being original, it's just a matter of doing it better than other people.
That's
Not originality, it's execution.
Yep.
Adventure Time got 9 seasons out of basically being weird pulp tales with a more modern art style and weirdness to it.
So, looks like Afgharian is turning on us. Because Lita and the princess are witnesses to Argan Zalbag's plot, and yeah, you don't want witnesses loose lips sink ships.
Does it count as a betrayal if he was engaged before he ever joined on?
Okay, no, I don't think so. But it's more that Reinhardt has changed his mind in the meantime. We're probably finding out his old buddy's involved.
Ah, betrayal.
Okay, Stark, that's right. I forget which brother it was, but it is the older one. Makes sense. Oh, yeah, so I could forget Deer exploded Tata, Leeta's sister.
Let's see. Mega Buster Shepherd says Adventure Time got 9 seasons of terrible shipping and a season and a half of adventures. Coming from someone, as a guy who's never watched any of it myself, yeah, I can't bring in and disagree, but I just don't know much to say about it myself. But I do know that the shipping in that show seemed to be cancerous, so I'm leaning towards that being right.
It seems like it got pretty bad. I'll defer to Mega Buster here because I have not actually watched all 9 seasons. So I've mostly seen earlier stuff. But it did seem to disappear up its own navel with world building near the end, and the shipping was super cancerous. As it usually is with those kinds of shows and the kind of people they attract.
Once again, Frank Herbert was proved correct over Lord Acton.
Well, you've got to explain that one.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely? No. Power attracts the corruptible.
Mm-hmm. I think I first read that quote when I was in sociology class in high school, and it immediately clicked and stuck with me, as did much else in Dune, but yeah, I mean, seriously, just watch the news.
Martel and I were discussing that. Gosh, it was a while ago at this point, but we'd realized that so many of the protagonists in mainstream entertainment, like they try to push the idea that power is bad and you should be very reluctant with it, and so you end up with all of these heroes that don't actually know how to use it, and what you need are protagonists that know how to use power, so you can have an aspirational character that demonstrates if you have power, this is how you use it properly.
Yeah. I think that also ties into the glut of characters who refuse the call. Right? Because it's a dead horse by now, but every screenwriter misuses and overuses the hero's journey. They think of it as being prescriptive instead of descriptive. They're like, oh, well, like step 3 is the hero refusing the call, so we got to have him do that. And like that just ruined the Two Towers, for example, the movie version.
Right. Now it'd be nice if there was someone in Hollywood that actually would have read Campbell.
It was probably a terrible movie anyway, but that's also what had me turn off Wrath of the Titans like 15 minutes into it, was the hero refusing the call. I'm like, you are a demigod, sir. This is not what you should be doing in this kind of movie.
Hear, hear.
And it's every movie, too. There's... Yeah. It would be nice if they could just have the hero go and do something. Or show a speck of agency.
That's something I'm trying to do in my light novel project, is the main character turns into a insane body horror superhero, not because he accidentally runs into a dying alien or anything, but he is offered the opportunity and is like, yes, I will take this chance and seize it with both hands because I want this.
Something like that. It just... The thing I've noticed is that both hero and villain stories always read the same way. It was always some formative experience when they were a kid, and then they went on to become whatever the story is going to be.
One bad day theory rears its ugly head again.
Yeah, ultimate failure.
Yeah, the xenocidal maniac isn't a xenocidal maniac because of philosophy or because he just thought it over and decided all the aliens had to die. He's that way because he got bullied by some aliens at grade school.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's why Thanos was one of the better characters, because he actually came up with his ideas on his own, and then no one listened to him, so he decided to do it himself.
Right, but even then, you had the flavor of the, the one bad day with him because no one would listen. So it's really someone else's fault. You really have to sympathize with Thanos in the end.
I'm going to slightly disagree on that. It's more just strength of will in the case of Thanos. It's something that happened because he wants it to happen.
His planet dying, I don't read so much as a one bad day as him feeling vindicated in his philosophy and being strengthened to continue. Like, it wasn't what set him on the path, it's more just what convinced him, like, nope, I was right, I warned them and they didn't listen, so I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take that.
It's the case of him realizing what happens when he doesn't have the strength of will to act on his convictions. Which is why he was so much more compelling than all of the other heroes and villains that Marvel's written who were just kind of doing something.
Yeah, I see someone in chat saying Thanos was an out-of-control Gaia worshipper. Not in the comics.
No, he was an out-of-control death worshipper.
Mm-hmm.
Literally.
Yeah, literally.
Actually, I think the movie version was better. But
Comic version
I'm not
simped too hard.
Yeah. I'm not saying that he was the good guy, just that he had a set of beliefs, a desire to act on them, and he did, which makes him more compelling than all of the other Marvel characters who just react to what happened.
Right.
He was the only one to bring a philosophy to a gunfight.
Yep.
Pretty much.
Speaking of which, we have all kinds of philosophizing in the middle of this fight in-game.
And Chan is bringing up Devil May Cry, which actually is a good example of what he's talking about. And the Death Knight has a very, a lot more money-focused philosophy than I would expect out of a Death Knight.
Yeah. He's after the filthy lucre.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just covers it up with a veneer of fatalism. Like, well, everybody's got to die sometime.
Lazy nihilist.
Yep.
My nemesis.
Oh, don't worry.
Well, then you go first, sir.
I'll make sure he does.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be really mean. I'm gonna mean to him.
Death Knights get a cut of all the gold that goes to Pluto, right?
Wait, does that mean that a Death Knight is just a paladin who worships Hades?
Basically.
Big if true.
Many such cases.
So how's she doing?
Either that, or you are... It's like a spiritual vocation to serve as a living memento mori to all of your opponents before you kill them.
That would be pretty cool.
So that's how you can tell the difference. If they're rich, they worship Hades. If they're poor, seek your confessor.
This guy dude's way down here. Alright, I'm gonna do something a bit risky.
That would be a cool story, actually.
Druids are just paladins of Gaia.
You know, I had an idea a while back for like paladins for more metaphysical concepts. The thing I came up with was a red paladin.
Sounds cool.
Favorite weapons are a hammer and sickle, if you get my drift.
Yeah.
I think that character's in the Bible. I think he's a horseman named Famine.
I was gonna say you could destroy the the red paladin by just throwing a piece of bread at him or something.
And can you destroy someone who doesn't recognize what it is you're throwing at them?
You know what? Jeez, that's true.
I think radio broadcasts about American traffic jams might be effective.
What was that that old anecdote about Soviets showing films about how miserable it is to be poor in America, but all it did was made Soviet people recognize that even poor people in America have cars.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I remember something to that effect, and I had a little anecdote. That was something.
Real propaganda requires skill.
And the Soviets ran out at the end.
That was why the traffic jam broadcast worked too. Because they were like, the Soviets tell us the Americans don't have that many cars, but why would Americans lie about something like a traffic jam?
Yeah. I mean, there was something to communism in the 30s and the 40s, but it really depleted itself in World War II on account of that massive war machine that Stalin spent 10 years building up, got annihilated by the Wehrmacht in the first 2 months of Barbarossa, and then they threw another 10 million men into the meat grinder, so they couldn't sweep in and conquer the rest of the world like they were planning. And then, after 30 years of stagnation, they just didn't really have it in them anymore. They weren't even torturing and executing dissidents by that point. They were
Sad.
just throwing them in solitary.
Well, and also there's the fact that at first when they were first trying to figure out how to run a centrally planned economy, they ended up going with something like what China has now, with like limited free markets, and honestly, kind of what we have right now. But then when Stalin swept in, they just went full hardcore communist, and
Yeah.
like the emergent
Well,
markets
so-
they had.
It'd be the
What
early
happened
20s.
was, what happened was Lenin initially did go full communist to the point where they did stuff like abolish currency. That really didn't work out for them,
Mhm.
so then they switched to the more limited thing. And then when Stalin swept in, it might have just been to show that he was different from Lenin, and it also might have just been that he was so paranoid he really couldn't conceive of any potential alternate centers of power. Because, yeah, he was paranoid.
Yeah. Ask the guys airbrushed out of the photos.
Yep.
Okay. So that was worth the cost. Hehehe.
Looks like Ben Wheeler's signing off. Have a good night.
Oh, good night.
Yeah. There's an absolutely wonderful book that came out last year called Stalin's War. Very thoroughly researched. Good for just showing a part of the war that doesn't really get delved into a lot. By Sean McMeekin, if anyone wants to look it up.
Thanks for the tip.
Bradford Walker is here. Hello, Brad.
Oh, hey, Bradford.
Martel, you said that was McKeithen?
McMeekin.
McMeekin.
I'll post it in chat.
Look how far my archer can attack when he's up high. Woo! Okay. Moving into position. Yelling at her to go faster. But yeah, the Soviet Union really was artificially drawn out. I mean, it was really over. It was dead before, like long before it realized it was dead. I mean,
Yeah.
really, they only got about 20, 30 years out of the actual experiment, and I mean, that's like 1 or 2 generations. There have been kings that have served longer.
Yeah. Well, we gave them a real shot in the arm with the Lend-Lease,
Mm-hmm.
which was neither a lend nor a lease. But, and then they probably bought themselves a few more years of stability when Stalin died and they de-Stalinized.
Mm-hmm.
But again, by that point, the vital energy had been spent. And, well, look at what happened with the Politburo when Brezhnev took over and it became a gerontocracy. There was actually a Soviet joke. What's the difference between our succession system and the Tsars? Well, under the Tsars, power passed from father to son, And under the Politburo, power passes from grandfather to grandfather.
Shades of Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, etc.
Oh, yeah. No, the Politburo were actually about 10 years younger on average than the current.
That's now reminding me of a film that Death of Stalin, back in 2017.
Great film.
Great film.
Have not seen it. I need to see that.
It is hilarious.
Imagine how different history would be if the Russian Empire was still a thing, instead of collapsing in World War I and giving way for the rise of communism.
I mean, at that point, you might as well just ask an ancient we have.
If only, if only.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. Mega Buster Shepherd says, you know, Churchill in the UK wanted to put Prince Ferdinand on the throne and restore the Kaiser after the war.
I doubt that.
On the throne of what country?
Oh, Germany.
Interesting.
It-
Haven't heard that one before.
Nah. I actually feel kind of sorry for Churchill, because he was one of those old-fashioned, bloody-handed, old-school British warmongers who just wanted a war, wanted the glory of that war brings, and then at the end everyone shakes hands and goes home. There was so you know how he was Lord of the Admiralty in World War I, came up with Gallipoli? After that debacle, he resigned his post and asked for a post in the trenches. Got sent over to, I think, lead a grenadier regiment. And there was a photo of him in the trenches with his men. And he just looked like the happiest man alive.
Yeah, Hitler supposedly enjoyed serving in World War I as well.
Yep.
He did.
Now, if you read Ernst Junger, Storm of Steel goes into the psychology of a lot.
Storm of Steel is an excellent read.
Yep.
Excellent read. For anyone in the chat.
Yeah. He talks about how there's a feeling like none other when two stormtrooper leaders come face to face in the trenches. Nice. And
Yeah, I'm
for
gonna
those who
take 'em
don't
apart.
know, Germany just classified all shock infantry meant to break through enemy defenses as stormtroopers. They actually designated the U.S. Marines as a stormtroop unit when they entered the war. So when he talks about two stormtroop leaders coming face to face, he's talking about the enemy stormtroop leaders as well. An interesting side note. But yeah, there's heck, the Taliban actually show this. There's a hilarious article I read the other month talking about the former mujahideen who have now been given posts in the resurrected Taliban Afghanistan. One of them was made the police chief of his local area of the city. And he said something to the effect of, when we were mujahideen, we were cold, we were hungry, we were in constant peril, but we were brothers and we were fighting for something greater than ourselves, and it was glorious. Now I can't sleep at night because I'm worried that there's a burglary going on, domestic abuse or something.
Yeah. I read that one too. It's interesting, isn't it? In a lot of ways, it's easier to fight to overthrow a government than it is to be a government yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see that repeat over and over and over again for however many
Oh, and he
revolutionaries.
teleports away.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I broke
Uh-oh.
his expensive helm and armor, though.
At least you got that.
Well, I humiliated him.
It
Yeah,
is
like-
still
Yeah,
annoying.
it's still on Internet Archive, but I would recommend just getting your own physical copy.
Get the Mystery Grove Publishing version.
Yes, that is the definitive translation, the most complete.
Because later editions, they had some parts rescinded for various reasons.
But yes. If you're reading The Storm of Steel, of course, I also recommend A Man in His Time by Prince Serge Obolensky. He is another fascinating man, much like Ernst Junger.
Minor of Trouble.
Mind Word Trouble is
Also-
another excellent one. Peter Kemp, of course, is another very fascinating man, very venerable man. But yeah, so the Peter Kemp trilogy, starting first with Mind Word Trouble, The Storm of Steel by Ernst Junger, and then One Man in His Time by Serge Obolensky. Excellent reads.
Is that last one also Mystery Grove?
Yep, all three are Mystery Grove. Serge Obolensky, in particular, I think is interesting. If our school curriculum wasn't actually malicious and demonic, One Man in His Time, I think, would be required reading an American history curriculum, because Serge Obolensky was first a nobleman of the Russian Empire, born to one of the most powerful aristocratic families in Russia. He became a cavalry officer in World War One. After the Tsar abdicated, he fought in the Russian Civil War as part of the White Russians against the Reds. When they lost, he escaped, traced about Europe, and then moved to America. And a lot of his book actually describes America during the Roaring Twenties, right? It's one of the best first-hand accounts we have of the time. And then, in World War II, he actually became a U.S. Army officer. He was the oldest man to go through Army Airborne School at the time. Which, by the way, Army Airborne School at the time was not like Army Airborne School today, where it's just 3 weeks. Army Airborne School was intense. That was commando training back then. And then he became an officer in the OSS, our equivalent to the MI6. And then he actually was, I think it was it was Sardinia. He parachuted in and took it single-handedly from Axis occupation.
Sardinia.
Yep.
The island south of Corsica.
Yep.
Okay.
He is quite the man. He was also very successful in business as well. Very interesting man. His book would be required reading in American literature classes, like I said, if school curriculum were actually meant to help students.
Okay, and on that note, we've been streaming for an hour, knocked out 2 story-related battles, so I'm going to ease back into this. I'm going to call that for the game for now, and I'm just going to look over chat, see if there's anything I missed. Yes, Raul, now I have a princess. That's correct. I think she's even... Yeah, so there's Avelia. We found out is adopted. Man, hope you guys are paying attention during that battle, because there were a lot of just offhand comments that turn out to be really important. This game does that a lot. But she has her own class. So Princess is a job class. With counter tackle. Because every princess has got to learn that.
Equip axe? Did I just see?
Yeah. Yes, it did.
Huh. Very princessy.
They basically just threw all the best stuff from like Squire White Mage together.
Sounds like a good class.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it doesn't have much, but what it does is pretty top flight. I think they gave me enough JP to master it. There we go,
Yeah.
Master Princess.
Nice.
Ooh, can get some archer stuff. I'm gonna wait till I get a jump +1. You always want to get the mobility stuff as soon as you can.
See, we share a philosophy in upgrading units in these types of games.
Oh, that's reassuring.
Which is
Going for improved mobility at the start over like improved damage.
Although I did make an exception here, but only because this is an NPC character I don't always have control over. So I gave her a JP enhancing ability first. But then I'll get move +1.
And any kind of game that rewards maneuver, being able to maneuver more is usually a good call.
Yeah, that's why I've got move +2 on my knight.
Gustavo Zanato in the chat is asking, is this a PSX or a PSP version?
This is the original. This is the PlayStation 1. So I believe that's the PSX. There's so many versions of the original PlayStation that I think that I know Sony came out with a version called the PS1, which I think was a little more compact version. And so I think everyone started calling it the PSX after that. I don't know.
At least it wasn't the IBM PS1.
Yeah, what's wrong with that one?
No, that was one of IBM's first compact computers back in like 1981.
Ooh. Right, and he mastered Archer. Anyway, I'll get to more of this later and probably do some more grinding between battles. Now, I am eventually going to want to free up, I believe, a total of 6 spaces for some other cameo and special characters, including Cloud from FF7, but I can always kill and fire people as we go along.
Are you able to just dismiss characters, or do you have to get them killed?
I can dismiss them.
Okay.
I can also hire more anytime I want. But they always start as like level 1 squires or level 1 chemists. Which have their uses. Like the punching bags you mentioned before. And yeah, I am playing this game on a PlayStation 2 right now through a capture card. Yep, Bradford's right. Okay, and that looks like the last question in chat. So, gonna call it here. Let's do this again tomorrow night. What's everybody think? Sound good?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm down.
All right, excellent. So,
I should be here as well.
good. So then, if you like this episode, make sure to hit the like button. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you'll be notified of more episodes of Retrospective and the main Geek Gab show on Saturdays with the Daddy Warpig and Dornall. Thanks for showing up to watch this game tonight and listen to our rousing historical and literary criticism talk in the panel. I've been your host, Brian, and with me tonight have been...
On Studios.
Catholic Lancer.
Crusader Saracen.
And Martel was here also.
And Martel.
Oh, there he is. Okay, thanks for joining us. See you tomorrow night. Remember,